for schools?
Well, it's most unfortunate. I wouldn't think that anyone would want to think so, because if you politicize investigation, then it will not stand the test of time in court, because the court will decide whether such an offense has been committed, and that what we present as the final result of the investigation will stand the test of time. So we don't have that opportunity to decide. We are just merely putting together facts, evidences that we presented in court.
Now, yesterday, the National Assembly reiterated the vote of confidence, no confidence, that had earlier passed on your boss. How is that affecting morale among the people and the moral authority to do the job that you're supposed to be doing?
You know, the National Assembly is a revered institution, and we cannot say anything again to injure it. But I want to say that I'm just leaving the office now, and I left the General Police in the office. It has not affected our morale. It has not stopped us from doing our job, and we will continue to do our job. And in doing that, we will try as much as possible to imbibe international best practice.
When we talk to Senator Sabe, in passing a vote of no confidence on the Inspector General of Police, does it cross your mind, or do you worry at all about what this might be doing to the rank and file of the police, who are expected to go out under very difficult conditions to actually protect Nigerians, and how this might affect their ability to carry out their job? Because you're essentially saying you don't trust them by saying you don't trust their boss. Or that is not an issue?
Well, you see, earlier on, my very good brother said we should separate the institution from the individual. And within this context, I'm somebody who believes in strengthening institutions, because we as human beings will come and go, but these institutions will outlive us. And whatever we do, definitely we count as individuals in either making these institutions to be what they are seen to be or something else. So within this context, like I said earlier, we're in a democracy. Different people with different ideas and different views. And at the end of the day, when majority comes up with anything, whether it is good or bad, the beauty of democracy and the core element of democracy is such that is what takes precedence, that is what comes top. And so even if it's a madman today that Nigerians come out and vote for and say this is the person they want, if it is democracy we're talking about, the element of legality, authority, and the capacity for that person to do what he's doing because it's a donated power coming from the people remains sacrosanct. So on this note, what I want to say is we're in a democracy, and we should not forget that at every time we're discussing. Things might not go your way, things might be unpalatable, but tolerance and accommodation will enable us to resolve even very thorny issues.
Okay, and I think we'll get a chance when we're talking about how we move forward to discuss some of those suggestions on how to do it. But I want to speak to Mr. Clement here. Part of the issue that keeps putting, it seems, the National Assembly at odds with the executive is the thorny issue of their oversight function as contained in the Constitution, and the belief that many of them are overstepping their boundaries. How do you see it, given some of the issues we've seen playing out?
I think from Section 88 of the Constitution is quite clear what the powers of the National Assembly to do. Once it has powers to make law on a subject, or appropriate on a subject, or budget, it then has powers to oversight that. The challenge, of course, is you have the National Assembly with and the Senate, more than 65 committees. In the House of Representatives, close to about 90 committees. So the multiplicity of committees means that there is sometimes a rash of invitations to public officials, and sometimes it irritates a particular executive member to be invited by several committees in a short period of time. And so when you get a lot of those invitations, it creates its own crisis. But certainly, it is the responsibility of a public official who is invited by the legislature to respond to that.
And just for clarity's sake, does respond mean you have to physically be there? Are you allowed constitutionally to send a representation if you are not able to make it? What does that actually mean? Because partly we've seen, particularly in the case of the Inspector General of Police, him sending a representation which was turned away, and I think we've had cases like that before. So what does the law actually say?
The Constitution says that the National Assembly can summon any person. Interpreting that, it means an individual person who occupies an executive position. So if the National Assembly says we are summoning the police, then it means the police may send someone. But if it says we're summoning the Inspector General of Police, certainly the person occupying that office has a responsibility to go to the National Assembly. And then perhaps go with additional officials to answer questions that may be asked. So I think the law is quite clear on this subject. The main concern that a lot of us have watching the legislature, watching that relationship, is the number of committees that invite public officials at random in ways that sometimes affect their functionality. But clearly, the National Assembly has powers to invite an official of government to come to attend hearings.
Okay, we're going to have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll open up this conversation and bring in our studio audiences. Don't go away.
The Parliament is an independent arm of government, and we have a constitutional responsibility and obligation to do what we need to do. And it is natural sometimes you have a request from the executive arms and then it passes through seamlessly. And sometimes you have some issues associated with such kind of request or presentations. So there is nothing so abnormal. It is everywhere, it happens everywhere in the world, even in developed democracies.
You see, the issue of the misunderstanding or communication gap between the legislature and the executive has always been there, largely because of the understanding or deliberate effort, by some members of the two arms of government to try to create a scenario of undermining the theory or the principles of the separation of power as espoused in our Constitution.
Yes, separation of powers within the ambit of constitutionally assigned roles for each arm of government. But in terms of wanting to achieve good governance, you will necessarily need interdependence.
Infighting is healthy, but there's some kind of infighting that becomes very unhealthy for the system. And that's because we're not, I'll still bring it back to us having a deep understanding of the things we need to do to grow a democratic system.
Art from the heart radiates beauty of sound, sights, and emotions.
Our social media handles, Twitter at Channels TV, at Kedria Ahmed. Please use the hashtag NGTheCall. We are also on Facebook at Channels Forum. Before I open the conversation to the audience, I want to come back to you, Senator Sabi. You heard Mr. Clement Nwako there talking about the multiplicity of committees that have oversight responsibilities and how that can be quite a burden. In addition to that, of course, in recent times, we've also had prominent people like Professor Atayo Ujeka and even Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala talk about the fact that members of the National Assembly, sometimes demand gratification for doing their job. And all this obviously puts doubts in people's minds about the way you carry out your oversight functions.
All right, thank you very much. First, let me say that the way the legislature works, is such that the committee remains the engine room through which the work of the legislature is facilitated. And what I have seen from my personal experience is without the committees, some of this work and the speed at which you want them to happen will not happen.
People are talking about the numbers.
And so, yes, this is the reason why we're having the number, because people may see it as multiplicity, but then if you look at the enormous work that needs to be done, and if you see a particular committee trying to get down to some work, then you understand that yes, if you don't have that kind of number, it may be difficult for you to even meet some of the objectives. Because the key issue is, at the committee level, you want to go down to details, you want to really have time to look at the issues and tease it out properly. Because if you bring a large number of people, then you are not able to really get down to the issues. So for us, the committee remains the core engine room. And if you look at the numerous challenges we are having, then it behoves on us that yes, we must have such number. Now, I'm also noting the point you have raised about the multiplicity of invitation. Now, let me say that when it comes to the issue of invitation, there is a season where you have more invitation, and this is during the budget time. And the Honorable Attorney General is here. I cannot remember the last time, maybe he was in the last 1 month, how many times he has been summoned. So the issue is, it's not as if summoning people to appear before the National Assembly is just for the fun of it. It is only when there are issues.
Okay.
And it behoves on us as public officers serving our people to know that at any time you can be called upon to do your work. I'm happy to know that the DIG said you left the IG working at home. We are here, we are working.
Okay, let me quickly bring in the Attorney General, because of course he oversees the ministry, and your ministry of course is, the National Assembly also has oversight responsibility over your ministry. In your experience, do you think they carry out their oversight functions according to the Constitution, the way it is supposed to be?
Well, in assessing or analyze or coming to conclusion as to whether the oversight functions are being properly conducted by the National Assembly, I think the major consideration has to be situated within the context of the Constitution. Analyzing the provision of the Constitution, if you look at the provisional section for the Constitution alongside with the provision of Section 88 of the Constitution, I think the fundamental functions of the legislature, one is the lawmaking within the context and spirit of Section 4 of the Constitution, and then two, oversight. And the oversight functions that we are talking about is not open-ended. In all sincerity, if you are talking of oversight functions within the context of the workings of the ministries, departments, and agencies, the major consideration, the major responsibility of the National Assembly as it relates to oversight functions is the exposition, that is exposing corruption. That is the bottom line. So I cannot, in all sincerity, come to terms with the reality of declaration of vote of no confidence against the ID, where to situate it within the context of the lawmaking responsibility of the National Assembly and within the context of exposing corruption. I think that is where we are listening before it exceeding the bounds within the context of our respective responsibilities.
Okay, and specifically experience within your ministry and how they've carried out their duties?
Well, in my own case, for example, arising from a case, I was adjudged fraudulent by the National Assembly, and I think declaration that pronouncement is within the exclusive context of the judiciary. It is the judiciary that has the responsibility of analyzing the facts, assessing them, and then arriving at a logical conclusion as to whether indeed any fraud has been committed or not.
Yes, I wanted to go to the audience, but it's really important I ask you a question. Isn't this really part of, why we end up with institutions that we end up undermining institutions? You've got an Inspector General of Police that the National Assembly says, we don't believe he's up to the job. An Attorney General, a sitting Attorney General that the National Assembly says, well, you know what, we think he's committed fraud. And then now we have a Senate President that is being accused of having some sort of relationship with people who are suspected to be armed robbers, killing 30 people. And I'm suggesting that there's something we're doing that is allowing for people, important people in our government, to be subject to this sort of accusations that essentially belittle the institutions that are supposed to promote our democracy?
Well, first, before I go into your point, I'm not a lawyer. The Attorney General is the senior advocate of Nigeria, and he said, with respect to Section 88, what it talks about when he said expose corruption, essentially, I don't agree with that, because that section says expose corruption, inefficiency, or waste in the execution or administration of laws within its legislative competence and in the disbursement or administration of funds appropriated by it. So it is not just the issue of corruption itself. And when you say inefficiency, what is the definition of inefficiency? It has to do with both processes, actions and inactions, and the like.
Okay.
And so for me, the bottom line is, I'm happy he has said we should operate within the context of the law. That is true, and all of us have to respect that. Now, with respect to the last, the first question you raised, or the main question you raised, this is the reason why all of us are not happy. Because at any point, two wrongs never make a right, at any time. For me, as the legislature, first and foremost, my allegiance is to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because I swore to defend and protect the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and I also have my oath of office allegiance to the Senate as an institution, and a democratic institution for that matter. So the point I want to make here is, you see, we all have to disabuse our minds from trying to take things personal. There is no point, even if there are issues that you have seen, it is through the process of engagement, through the process of talking to each other, that these things can be understood. And the point is, I was from the executive side. I was a public servant up to 2014. Now, what I have come to realize is this. When an officer is invited to engage the legislature, it is when you don't engage the legislature and you are giving reasons here and there that you also get the ear of the legislators feeling that you are undermining them, and in the process, they begin to also take actions that leads to undermining.
I have to go to the audience because we're running out of time, and I've brought all these very erudite people. Anybody with comments about what we've been discussing, the issues that have been, going on, please raise your hands. I'll point to you. You say what you want to say and introduce yourself as well while you do that. Okay, there's a lady, yes, over there. Please keep it short.
My name is Nanawachuku. I want to ask two questions. First, to the Honorable Senator. You passed a vote of no confidence on the IGP. My question is, the letter that invited the IGP mentioned Senator Dino Melai. Your vote of no confidence, was it based on issues generally affecting Nigerians, or was it based on issues affecting the Senate alone? Now, to the DIG, my question is this. You said we should stick to the issues, and you have done your job to the best of your ability within the ambit of the law. You practically ran a media trial on the Senate president. Do you hold such press conferences for every crime of that nature committed in Nigeria? Okay. Or was there a reason why you decided to run a social media trial? Thank you very much.
Okay, we have you. All right. Yes, Dr. Joe Abba in front here, in blue. Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. My name is Joe Abba, and until about 7 months ago, I was in government. I have to say that I agree with the Senator's latest points about the need to respect the institution when you're invited. In my own experience, whenever the National Assembly has invited me, I've supplied them with all the information they want. I've given them, I've proactively disclosed everything.
Have they overstepped their boundaries with you, as has been alleged in other cases, whether it is in terms of looking for graft or asking you to do things that you really shouldn't do?
I think it was much easier for me because the bureau I ran had no money, so nobody bothered. But I think in terms of asking, what we were doing and making sure we're reporting on what we did, no, nobody ever overstepped any bounds. But I feel that issues have been personalized on both sides. on both the side of the National Assembly and the executive, and that this is unhealthy.
Okay. We will come to, there's a lady at the back, Aisha Osori, and then we'll come back to the panel and get responses before we go back to the audience again.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Aisha Osori. I guess for me listening, I was just wondering what's new about what we're talking about in the context of being a democratic government since 1999. There's always been tension between the executive and the legislature. We saw it during Obasanjo's time, we saw it during Jonathan's time, and we're seeing it now. So for me, I think we're missing something about what we're talking about. The perception about the National Assembly, for example, is that we're supposed to have, the checks and balances should always cause tension. There should always be tension among the three arms. That's normal. That's what the checks and balances are for. What we should be asking ourselves, what Nigerians are increasingly asking themselves is this tension for our own good? Or is it for the benefit of the people who are in office or who are abusing their office? So perception is reality. If the perception about the National Assembly is that they use their powers to shake down people, then the truth is they lose the sympathy of Nigerians when they do invite people who don't attend or who don't honor their calls. So that's one perception. The other perception is that the Nigerian police is not independent of the president. And people have been calling for that as part of restructuring, as part of saying, let the Police Act change Section 9 that gives all these powers to the president. So again, there's that perception that the Nigerian police does not operate as an independent body and is often used to witch hunt. So we can't run away from these perceptions. So for me, it's asking these questions, what can we do to change the nature of our politics where so much power is in the hands of so many people, and the people that abuse their powers don't seem to get their comeuppance? Those are the questions that Nigerians are asking today.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Because we've got only 3 minutes before we have to take a quick break, I think I'd like to come back to the panel and get a response. Perhaps we could start with the police. The question around why you conducted what is seen to be the media trial of the Senate President.
Thank you so much. That is quite unfortunate. The intention of holding press conferences and informing members of the public of that crime was not intended at the Senate President. It was the intention of the police. There have always been reminded of the fact that cases that are celebrated, cases that are of high profile, cases where there were 33 people killed, we needed to let the people know that we've gotten those that have done that.
Do you regret the way it has played out and the impacts of that?
We didn't know that it was not intended at the institution of the National Assembly. Like I say, we always want to let the people know what is happening, and then let the people that we've arrested speak. But the final thing, like I said, court will determine as to what exactly played out.
So are there lessons learned from that? I mean, going forward, are we going to have you in the media talking about these sort of issues, or have you decided that that's not the way to go again?
No, we are not saying that's the way to go. When people criticize, we look at them objectively and we do that which is right. But I want to say that oftentimes they've accused us for not letting people know what we're doing about certain crimes that have been committed. And sometimes when you don't let people know what is happening, people think that you're playing politics, but people gone beyond our bounds. There are a lot of cases that have been thrown up. Okay. That it seems that,
I'm going to have to take a quick break. Don't go away. The invitation you sent out to Inspector General of Police, where you mentioned the case of one of your colleagues, Senator Dino Melani, and the perception that the only time you seem to get very heated is when your own members are affected, as opposed to issues pertaining to Nigerians. How do you respond to that?
Well, in situations like this, everybody is entitled to his opinion, and you must respect every views that people express. Before that particular episode, we have earlier on invited the IG, and he refused to come. He took us to court, and the court ruled that within the context of Section 88 and the section empowering him to also carry out investigation, we are all legally empowered to carry out our duty, and that for that, he ought to respect the summons to appear before the Senate. Now, this particular episode, a lot of things were happening, issues around insecurity, and of course, let me say, from my understanding, that the issue of Senator Dino was like a trigger that says, look, there are a number of issues now. Let's invite the IG to know what is happening. And for me, if you invite the IG to come and appear before us, like the argument went that time, if he felt this issue was already in court, and of course, because of that,
because he did appear at some point with a lawyer,
yes,
and he refused to answer questions on the basis
that is it, and that
the
was
issue was in court.
Yes. So within that context, if he had appeared, first he would have achieved two things. He will be able to at least show that he respects the institution of the Senate as an institution. And of course, the simple question or the simple response will be, well, this matter is in court. I'm sorry, I cannot give you any further information.
Okay.
But then, to answer the question she raised, the subject of invitation included the issues of insecurity.
Okay, let me have very little time, so that's why I'm interrupting you. Mr. Karamoko, I want to quickly ask you, in situations where the judiciary has been invited, we have sort of found some sort of resolution. For example, when the National Assembly wanted to change the order of elections. And so I'm wondering, why is there a reluctance generally to bring this third arm of government into what is happening between the National Assembly and the executive as a way of mediating these issues? Because they're supposed to be the final arbiters, aren't they?
They are, if it goes before them. Certainly, there are issues here of reluctance on the part of certain officials of government to respect the legislature. The legislature, for me, is the difference between dictatorship and democracy. And I think that any arm of government that seeks to undermine the legislature threatens democracy, and I think that's definitely...
Isn't that the case only where all these institutions are functioning optimally and are behaving themselves and are doing things ethically and morally? So that separation of power that you're talking about presupposes that every arm of government is behaving properly.
Well, she wouldn't have excellence in behavior. Certainly there are challenges with some of the aspects of the work that the legislature is doing.
Okay.
With the executive, of course, there are challenges as well. What we are making, the point we're making is that we need to defend this democracy, and the way the legislature is being treated doesn't help.
Okay, and I have to give the final words to the Attorney General very quickly because we've got to go.
Yes. Well, the truth of the matter about it all is that we must, within the context of the spirit of democracy, learn to operate within bounds as far as our respective constitutional rights and responsibilities are concerned. Where there is an attempt by any arm of the government, be it judiciary, executive, or legislature, to work out of bounds, then it naturally creates chaos and problems.
Thank you so much. We have run out of time. Thank you to my panel, to my studio audience, and to all of you at home. Don't forget to join us for the next edition of The Core on Wednesday, the 4th of July, where we'll be discussing restructuring with two governors as well as representatives from both the APC, the PDP, and other parties. On behalf of Channels Television and Diane Media, I'm Kadria Ahmed, wishing you a very good evening.